Hey guys, happy PJ Day. I put my Christmas robe on for you. This feels really weird to be reading alone in my room to a computer screen, but I'm going to do it because I said I would. So, we left off at the end of chapter 3, where they were about to start their first challenge. They were in the mailroom and they had to put on their Santa hats and try not to get caught by that weird human child looking robot. So here we go. Chapter 4. The doors scraped against the ground as they swung open. We were one of the last teams to rush inside, since Ramp couldn't really move at much more than a hobble. Sorting mail? Ramp croaked as we neared the door. Why, if that's all it takes to be Santa, I'll be holding that Kringle in no time. Celia and I exchanged a look. He had no idea what the mailroom was like. The mailroom is way bigger than I started, but Celia cut me off with a look that said, let him see for himself. When we stepped through the door, he did. We all did. The mailroom was dark, very dark. This was the first immediate difference from normal. From what we could see, there were overhead lights hanging from the ceiling at equal intervals all the way up and down the warehouse that left big patches of darkness between spots that were very brightly lit. We could hear the squeak of the ChildBot wheels moving around, but none of those awful machines were visible to us at the entrance. We couldn't see very far into the room because there were thick walls, probably around 15 feet tall, forming 3 different paths into the mailroom. To our left and right were mountains of mail with mail bags lying in a heap between them. Some teams were still scooping mail into their bags, lagging behind others who had already run into the maze. I checked the perimeter walls. The mail slots were still there, so at least that was normal. There were slots up and down the mailroom's tall walls all the way back. Each was connected to a tube that sucked the letters underground and then redistributed them to the proper departments at the workshop, Wish Generator, or Claus Castle. On the far wall of the mailroom were slots for every individual citizen of the North Pole as well. The tubes would take mail directly to our houses or apartments. There was a lot of mail here. A lot of mail. And not a lot of time. Celia took charge. We'll have to open the letters and figure out where they go as quickly as possible. Ollie, you should do that, since you've done it before. I studied the mail slot organization last night, so I can make sure we get to the right departments quickly. Celia kept her voice down to avoid attracting ChildBots. She looked to Ramp, who was scooping letters into a bag. Ramp, we have to keep from getting burned, so you're on Child Watch. I'm on what? Ramp couldn't hear her, and he spoke so loudly we both jumped. Shh! Child Watch. He still couldn't understand. I can't hear you. What? I glanced around, nervous. Child Watch, Celia yelled. We need you to make sure the children don't find us. There was a faint squeak from the path on the far right. Is that you, Santa? A sickly sweet voice called. The only other team that was still by the entrance took off running. You shouldn't yell, Celia, Ramp chastised, as if her yelling hadn't been his fault in the first place. We're supposed to be sneaking around those automatons. Celia looked like she was about to start yelling at him, but I grabbed her hands before she had the chance and pulled us down the middle path. Santa, that is you! I heard the child's voice as we slipped between the maze's walls, followed by the crackling sound of fire. I hoped the robot hadn't set the whole pile of mail ablaze. We found a quiet spot after a few sharp turns in the maze. We passed several more piles of mail, so at least we'd be able to fill our bag up on the go. I opened our bag and pulled out a letter from Elliot McAvoy. Dear Santa, This Christmas, what I want more than anything is for a dinosaur toy with yellow workshop, animals division. I stamped it and passed it to Celia, who looked around to orient herself. Ramp peeked around the corner, keeping a lookout for more child bats. I hoped his eyesight was good enough to be helpful. Animals is back by the entrance. She grabbed the letter and took off running. We followed after her, and I opened another letter while we ran, from Nora Carter. Dear Santa, this year I want only one thing for Christmas. My sister to stop stealing my hairbrush and getting her gross hair all over. This one's Workshop Beauty. I figured getting a hairbrush for her sister was probably the best solution. Watch out, Ramp yelled. I reached out and grabbed the back of Celia's suit, tugging her back from a corner as flames shot out from the other side. Santa, where did you go? The girl's voice echoed around us. We hid against the wall in the dark while the child bat rolled around the corner. This one had hit its face on something, leaving the paint scraped off where one of its eyes should have been. The mangled metal baby doll face rotated around the hallway while we held our breath. Santa, I miss you. We pressed our bodies against the wall and pulled each other slowly around the corner. We sighed with relief when the bot moved out of sight, which was nice because I had completely forgotten about breathing. Celia led us back to the entrance of the mailroom and then right back into the maze on the far left. Sure enough, before the first turn, there was a slot in the wall that said, WS, Animals. She brought the letter close and the pipes sucked it in and away. Peanut brittle, she swore. What's wrong? Beauty is right next to it, but the maze is in the way. She was right, since the departments were in alphabetical order. Beauty would be just a little bit farther down the wall. Unfortunately, because of the shape of the maze, we'd have to turn and go deeper into the center to find our way back. Open another one and see if it's closer. I found one from Abraham Danton. Dear Santa Claus, my favorite color is pink. For Christmas, I would like something pink. I don't like purple, so it can't be purple at all. And my mom says I can't ask for anything too big because our apartment is not very big. I also do not want anything that is an animal because for the last few years, all my toys have been animals. I don't want to sound ungrateful because I like animals, but what's taking so long? Ramp was sweating, and it made his whole body smell like mothballs. I heard the whoosh of fire and someone screaming deeper in the maze. Abraham Danton won't get to the point. Celia rubbed her temples. Let's just send it to G&P. I'll find something for him later. I nodded and went to stamp it, but suddenly it was knocked out of my hands. Sorry, super dorks. Looks like I got that one first. Buzz holstered a stamp gun back on his belt and sauntered over to us. He picked the letter up off the ground. It was stamped with a picture of Santa Claus playing the marimba. That's not fair, Buzz, Celia frowned at him. How did he know to bring a stamp gun? How did he know to make a stamp gun? That letter was ours. And now it's mine. You said G&P, right? Thanks for reading it for me. Buzz took off running, but stopped suddenly at an intersection. He counted with his fingers. 3, 2, 1, and a child bat rolled past the corner. He waited for it to pass and ran down the hall where it had come from. How did he know it was going to be there? What a jerk. I split open another letter, this one from Mindy Ratchford. Dear Mr. Claus, I wish for a cannon for Christmas so that I can wish generator. We aren't supposed to make weapons, but her wish could at least provide a little bit of energy for the city. She wants a cannon. Ramp shook his head. Kids these days, all violent. He looked dangerously on the verge of a much longer complaint. It's those video games, I tell you, turning our brains into mush. Because I love those video games. Mush my brain right up, I say. He did a motion with his hand like he was squishing brain between them. Celia and I stared at him. Then Celia said, Okay, well, The wish generator slot is in the back of the room on the other side. I guess we're just going to have to try to get through the maze. I said, I heard this thing where if you put your hand on the left side of the wall and follow it, you'll eventually get everywhere in the... I don't have time for this! Ramp cut me off and leaned over to pull off his shoes. I held my nose. His pants were so baggy and low that I couldn't see his feet, but he looked very relieved and wobbled back and forth for a second. Give me the letter. I handed it to him warily. Ramp tilted his head to look up at the top of the wall like he was measuring the distance. He bent his knees a little, then suddenly sprang up from the floor and landed on the top, balancing perfectly. Celia and I gasped, startled. I'll be right back, he said, and took off running along the tops of the walls, bounding across the maze. Within a few seconds, he was back standing above us. How did you do that? I examined his shoes to see if they had any special tricks inside them. They seemed normal. We don't have time for stupid questions. What's the next one? I ripped open another letter. I want to be Bigfoot, and said workshop, costumes. Celia thought for a moment and told him where to go, and he bounded off in that direction again. We must not have been the only team to have this idea. I saw the triplets tossing each other across the walls above us while we were waiting for him. Our plan seemed to be working pretty well. I figured out where the letters should go, Celia remembered where the slot was, and Ramp jumped over the walls to get there. We had to keep moving almost constantly to avoid the child bots, but it was still way faster than doing everything as a group. We only ran into the team of Claus children once. Claus was barking orders to Sally and Bertrand the whole time. Bertrand had a little mechanical penguin on his shoulder, scanning and sorting letters quickly, and Sally made a toy that threw her voice and distracted the child bots. I saw Kurt a few more times. He and the redheaded girl were roller skating through the maze like they'd done it 100 times before. Buzz wasn't with them, probably because he was off stealing letters on his own. I saw one team get in a fight over which one of them was being lazier, and all three yanked off each other's hats and threw them right into a child bot's mouth. It quickly grabbed them in its pincer hands and dragged them outside while they kicked and screamed. Luther got caught because his vest glitched and stuck on maximum brightness. He shone the word jerk like a beacon for the child bots. But at least he was so short that the fire didn't even hit his body, just burnt the hat right off his head. So he was out. When the 10-minute warning sounded, Rudolph's translated voice blaring across the whole warehouse, Celia, Ramp, and I were all exhausted. Ramp landed on the ground next to us, and I handed him his shoes, which he took a long time to put back on. I think he stuffed them with something from his pockets. As he was bent over tying them, I started to panic. Uh-oh, guys, I stammered. Celia and Ramp both looked at me while I danced back and forth on my feet and pointed at Ramp's head. I've never been very good at getting my words out in high-pressure situations. I pointed to my own head and jumped up and down. What, Elf? Spit it out, Ramp grumbled. And stop dancing. I'm tired enough without seeing you put on this shameless display. Oh, no. Celia's eyes widened as she realized what I was trying to say. Your hat! You lost your hat somewhere. Ramp reached up and patted the top of his toupee. His hat was definitely gone. Peppermint bark, he swore. I must have dropped it while I was delivering letters. We only had 10 minutes to search the whole maze, and before we could even try, one of the child bots' voices rose from around the corner. Celia's eyes widened. Holy jingle bells, she started off yelling, then pulled her voice back down to a whisper. Suddenly, a huge smile broke out on her face. I get it. Get what? I asked. Celia pulled us back into the shadows while the child bot passed by. Did you eat your milk and cookies, Santa? It asked. The voice sounded scarier and scarier every time. The pattern They're following the same paths over and over, Celia said. I thought about Buzz and how he knew to wait for one of the child bots to pass by. Ramp, I know you had your hat when you sent that letter to the Jawbreaker department, because you said it was ugly and annoying and no one with any sense would ever wear it. Do you remember anything after that? Ramp thought for a second. Oh yeah, I took the hat off and threw it on the ground because I hated it so much while I was delivering the personal letter for Gary Goblin. You what? Celia yelled. Personal letter. I tried to keep us focused. That means the back of the maze, right? As far back as we could possibly go. Celia nodded. Follow me. Ramp groaned. I can't keep doing this. I'm too tired. I patted him on the shoulder. That's okay. You helped us a lot today. I tried to give him my biggest, most supportive smile, even though inside I was kind of upset with him. If you want, we can get it and meet you back at the entrance. Oh, you'd better. He started walking away without as much as a thank you. I'm not losing this challenge because you couldn't find a hat, he grumbled as he got farther away. Celia frowned. We wouldn't even have had a chance of winning without him, I reminded her. Plus, he's old, I think. Yeah, what's up with that? I shrugged, so Celia shrugged, and then we both shrugged at each other again and laughed. Focus, you goofball, she said. You're the goofball, I replied. She stuck her tongue out at me, then signaled which way to go with her head and started running through the maze. I followed as close behind her as I could and paused when she signaled. The difference was amazing. Now that she had figured out the pattern, we hardly ever even saw a child bot. We also didn't see anyone else, so I guess most people had found their way out by then. I kept my eyes on the ground, but never saw the hat. I was starting to give up hope. Maybe someone had grabbed Ramp's hat because their own had been burned, when I heard a quiet flapping noise. We were all the way up against the back wall, and the ball of Ramp's Santa hat was stuck in one of the mail slots. Goblin. Gary. Just like he'd said. The pipe was too small to suck the hat all the way in, so the air current was making it flap up and down. Celia and I grabbed it together and yanked it free. Suddenly, a siren started playing. Rudolph's voice came over the loudspeaker. 5 minutes left, wannabes, and I've got a surprise for you punks who think it's a good idea to cut it this close. Celia put her face in her hands. Oh, I don't want to know, she groaned. We were as far from the front door as it was possible to be. The sirens stopped, and the squeaking of wheels we had been hearing for the past 2 hours doubled in speed. Santa, is that you? Even the voice of the child bot had sped up and turned high and unnatural. It whipped around the corner at lightning speed, barreling toward us on its one wheel with terrifying purpose. It was the bot with the missing eye, back for vengeance. Run! I yelled. Celia and I bolted back into the maze, the child bot on our tail. Every once in a while it would shoot flames at our heels just to remind us it was there. About a quarter of the way back, another bot spotted us and joined it. A few turns later, a third and fourth. Santa, it is you, they screeched in chorus. I saw Celia's foot get caught in a blast of flame, but other than a little singe on the face of a kitten, the suit protected her. We barreled to the front door where Ramp was huddled in a corner. I don't like these automatons, he babbled as I threw him his hat. He tugged it on, and Celia shoved open the door for him to run through. Not one bit. I let Celia go out ahead of me, then glanced back. A one-eyed, giant child face was inches away from my face. I was staring directly into its scary, painted-on mouth. The flamethrower's hatch fell open. Did you eat your milk and cookies, Santa? I leapt backward out the door and slammed it behind me. I fell on my butt while flames licked out from the cracks in the door. Celia was bent over, hands on her knees, panting. Ramp was looking grumpy as ever. Well, Ramp looked around at the tired, sweaty crowd with a sour expression. I suppose we didn't do terribly. I saw Goldie, one of the triplets, roll his eyes. You hear that, Frank? He elbowed his sister in the ribs. Frank punched him back in the shoulder. Yeah, Goldie, I heard that. You hear that, Myrtle? Merle, sorry, not Myrtle. You hear that, Merle? She smacked her brother in the back. Merle hit her in the stomach. I heard 'em. They think they did good. What a bunch of twerps. All three of the triplets laughed in exactly the same way. Celia and I pretended not to hear them. Rudolph trotted through the crowd to us as a group of elves with clipboards sifted through to mark which contestants lost their hats. He passed Kurt, Buzz, and the redheaded girl, who all still had theirs. The Claus sibling team was safe too, and Claus looked confident. He always looked confident, though. Maybe that's just his face. When Rudolph arrived at our team, he lit his nose up as bright as I had ever seen it. We couldn't look directly at him. Everything, especially the snow, was bright red. You got lucky this time, wannabes. Looks like enough hats got burnt that you're barely scraping through. Celia and I beamed at each other. We made it. I saw the triplets shrug in the corner of my eye. Rudolph turned back to the group, and his nose blinked on and off like a strobe light. You'd better watch out, he called loudly over us all. You'd better not cry. You'd better not pout. Why? An elf in pigtails interrupted. Rudolph glared down at her and snorted. I'm telling you why. He returned his focus back to the crowd. Falling snow gently piled on his antlers. His nose stopped blinking, and he tapped a hoof on the ground twice, roughly. The Santa trials have only just begun. Chapter 5. The next month went by really slowly. It felt strange to go back to my regular games and puzzles work after so much deadly excitement. Santa never gave us a clue about when the next trial would start, so the only choice was to keep moving. The workshop wasn't boring. There's nothing boring about Christmas. But it felt like when you cry during a really great movie and then realize when you walk out into the sun that everyone else was just having a regular day. The contestants in the Santa trials had been through a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but we still had to make sandwiches and go to the bathroom. Celia said she was relieved for a break from the excitement, but I'd never seen her working harder. How many new blueprints have you turned in today? I asked as she slipped another rolled up piece of paper into the air tube on our office wall. She counted in her head. 8? No, 9. Wait, are you counting today as starting at midnight or business hours? Because at 2 a.m. I sent in plans for a trash can that sings when you throw things away. I think that already exists. I was programming the paint in a dollhouse to change colors when no one was looking, and had already coated the furniture to move around when everyone left the room. It was actually one of Sally's designs, a truly haunted doll mansion. Celia shrugged. Well, I made a better one. I got the hint that she didn't feel like talking. When I was through painting, I powered my paintbrush down, waved goodbye, and slipped out of our office into the hallway. Hallways in the workshop are busier than streets, especially around lunchtime, so I let the flow of the crowd pull me along toward the grand staircase. An elf woman with blonde hair and a big, neat tower on top of her head was leading 2 children along by the hand, so quickly their feet were coming off the ground. Oh yeah, we brought the whole family to watch the rest of the trials. This is history, you know. These guys, she lifted her kids high off the ground and wagged them in front of her friend, are a little too young to compete, but the memories will last a lifetime, won't they, boys? Yes, ma'am, the kids chimed together. They looked a little overwhelmed. Their mother's friend, a skinny man in a long, fuzzy robe, nodded. I feel bad for his son, Claus. The man spread his arms out wide and shrugged. He's a hard worker who deserves to be Santa. This must have come as a terrible surprise. I think an elf should win. Wouldn't that be a nice change? The woman apparently grew tired of leading the kids by the hand and set one of them on each of her muscular shoulders. They held onto her hair tower to keep from falling off. I missed the man's response because they turned off down another hallway and I was pushed ahead toward a staircase. I had to quickly slip around other elves to get to the edge of the crowd and almost tripped down the stairs when I finally pushed free of the current. I clung to the handrail and looked down. The grand staircase was the most beautiful part of the workshop. 2 intertwined spirals wrapped around each other in a double helix, like DNA, with a slide along the edge of both staircases that you could ride all the way down from the top to the bottom. Most people didn't because it was very fast and very scary. The spirals had thin, flat bridges connecting them to every floor across the wide open space between the hallways and the stairs. Huge decorations and giant glowing Christmas ornaments hung suspended in the air all the way down, and it was easy to get distracted staring at them, since they were redesigned and replaced every month. Today, I didn't have a chance to get distracted. The workshop was even more crowded than usual because of all the visitors here to see the trials, and the crowd was pushing me down the stairs so fast I would have fallen if we hadn't been packed together so tightly. When I got to the cafeteria, I slipped around the crowds to get in line for my favorite restaurant. Oh, bring us something other than figgy pudding, and started scanning through the menu, even though I already knew I was going to buy the reindeer nuggets. Chicken nuggets shaped like reindeer, not made of reindeer, obviously. Somebody shoved me forward into the human in front of me, but I caught myself on their back and pushed back up. They pretended they didn't notice, and when I turned around, I realized it was Buzz's crew. Of course. I'm pretty much the reason we got first place, Buzz was bragging to the group of elves who were always tagging along after him. I couldn't believe he was still talking about the first trial. I convinced Kurt to sneak in early with me and we scoped out the mailroom. We got lucky and even saw them testing the robots. Figured it all out before the trial even started. His crew laughed in a gross, mean way and my face turned bright red. They cheated. Not that I should be surprised. I ordered my food from an elf with an eye patch and a bionic hand that could change into any kitchen utensil. He had worked in the cafeteria so long that everyone just called him Chef. I'll have the reindeer nuggets, I said. He nodded. Good choice, kid, but be careful, they're spicy. That's what he always said. Everyone was kid and everything was always spicy, even when it wasn't. Just how I like 'em, I said. He giggled his high, tinny laugh and pushed on some nuggets with his spatula hand. The slats widened, shifting the spatula to form a little grill. The bars grew bright red to cook the nuggets on top, too. There weren't any open tables near the edge, so I wandered deep into the center. You don't understand, Sally, I heard Claus grumble. I jerked my head around and realized I was only a few feet from their table. I quickly lowered my head. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but I found a seat very close, so I could definitely hear their conversation. You 3 were never going to be Santa. Dad did this because he doesn't think I can handle it. Claus didn't sound sad, like I expected. He sounded excited. These contests are the perfect way to prove that I can, and I will, obviously. I took a bite of my reindeer nugget. It wasn't spicy. I don't know about obviously, Sally replied. I heard her book slam shut, which she only did when she was irritated. I've never seen Kurt be bad at anything he actually tries to do well. Yeah, but when was the last time you saw him try? He's only competing for some sort of stupid joke. He'll get bored eventually. Maybe. Or maybe the joke is that he's going to win. Either way, Bertrand is a better mechanic than any of us. Claus paused. Yeah, I guess Bertrand has a shot too, he said, but he didn't sound like he believed it. I heard a small voice groan. You're only saying that because you don't want to hurt my feelings. I hadn't even realized Bertrand was at the table, but his voice was unmistakable. I have just as much of a chance as any of you. That's what I said. Claus sounded like he was talking to a little kid, which just made Bertrand angrier. You don't mean that. I do. There was a moment of tense silence because everyone knew he didn't. Fine, Bertrand said. Treat me like a baby if you want. I'm not helping you in any more challenges, even if there are teams. That's stupid. Claus was still dismissing him. We know each other best. It makes sense to stick together when we can. No, you only know yourself best. I heard Bertrand push angry air out of his nose. And I don't care. If you want to be Santa, you can do it on your own. I'm going to prove that I'm a better Santa than all of you. I heard Bertrand's heavy footsteps as he walked away. He was stomping, and the pages of Sally's book flipping back open in the silence that followed. What about you? Claus asked after a while. What about me? You think Kurt and Bertrand could beat me? What about you? There was a short pause before Sally answered. When she spoke, she sounded like she was choosing her words very carefully. I'm not worried about winning. You don't want to be Santa? I didn't say that. But Bertrand's right. It's better if we don't team up anymore. I heard the dishes on Claus's tray clatter as he jerked it off the table. Great. Glad you both want to abandon me. We're not abandoning you, Drama King. And if we were, it would be because you act like this. I was already trying not to cry, and was relieved when I heard Claus breathe heavy out of his nose. I guess it was a Claus thing, and walk away. I hated seeing them angry with each other. They were the Clauses. They were supposed to represent the joy of Christmas for all of us. I stood up and stepped over to the table where Sally was reading by herself. I set my tray down next to her and looked at her with big eyes. I didn't see her glance away from her book, but she pushed up her glasses and frowned. Are you going to cry? She asked. No, I said, but in a shaky way that really meant probably yes. She smiled a little. Good. Don't. You should be happy. Claus needs to learn what to do when there's no one to boss around. She looked up at me for a second. It's Ollie, right? I nodded. Can I tell you a secret? I nodded again. You have to promise not to cry. Okay. I don't want to be Santa. But I can't tell anyone else, obviously. A Claus dropping out of the competition is just another story for the news. Sally flipped to the next page of her book. How is she reading and talking at the same time? I wondered. And my dad keeps telling me how amazing he thinks I would be at the job. I think he wants me to try even more than Claus. It would break his heart. One little tear rolled down my cheek. You promised! She flipped a page in her book and smiled. I'm sorry. I'm trying very hard not to cry. I mean it. I started smiling before I even finished. I think it was a leftover tear from earlier. Thanks for listening. I gotta go. Do you want my extra reindeer nuggets? Sally pushed her tray over to me, and I grabbed the ones that were left. See you later. But before she could finish, everyone in the cafeteria started yelling and pointing at their phones. The next competition was announced. That's where we're going to stop. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.